Subcommittee on the Interior will examine the problem of invasive species in the U.S. and the effectiveness of the federal government's attempts to control and eradicate invasives. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service specifically defines an invasive as an exotic species whose introduction into an ecosystem in which the species is not native causes or is likely to cause environmental or economic harm or harm to human health. There are currently almost 50,000 such species living in the United States. Not be a test on how many of those you can name. The impact of invasive species is hard to ignore. They're one of the leading causes of population decline and extinction in native plants and animals. They cause billions of dollars per year in damages across the country. Recently, the Department of the Interior estimated that it spends $100 million annually on invasive species management. In response to this significant and growing problem, President Clinton created the National Invasive Species Council in 1999. This council is co-chaired by the Secretaries of Interior, Agriculture, and Commerce. Its mission is to coordinate the work of numerous agencies to address and eradicate invasive species. Part of the council's job is to produce a national management plan every 2 years for the treatment and eradication of endangered species. Since 1999, the council has only released 2 plans, one in January of 2001 and nearly 8 years ago in 2008. A review of the 2001 plan by the Government Accountability Office found problems with coordination, delays, and setting clear long-term goals. In the past several years, there's been relatively little oversight of the Council's work and success in managing the invasive species problem. Questions continue to be raised about whether the Council and other federal agencies are effectively treating certain invasive species. The spread of these news is startling. 2 years ago, Dr. George Beck testified before the House Committee on Natural Resources about the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness of the Council and the federal government in treating invasive weeds. Dr. Beck warned that invasive weeds were spreading at a far faster pace than questioned the government's claims about the amount of land infested with non-native weeds that it successfully treated in previous years. He also cast doubts on whether the Council was using the most cost-efficient means of fighting invasive species. This hearing will allow the Council to update us on its progress. In addition, we'll look at the impact of 3 invasive species that have caused significant and costly headaches for my home state of Wyoming, as well as Ranking Member Lawrence's home state of Michigan. Mr. Hurd will also raise some issues in his district in Texas. The nuisance and dangers of these particular non-native species provide startling illustrations of the harmful effects of endangered species and the need for capable treatment efforts. Our witnesses today bring a broad and diverse knowledge of invasive species and the havoc they wreak on our country. We will hear from the Executive Director of the Council on its work. We will also hear from 3 experts who've studied the risks of invasive species in America and can provide insight into the importance and urgency of addressing this issue. As the problem of invasive species in America worsens, we must continue to revisit and reassess the situation and our treatment and eradication efforts. I look forward to the hearing, and I look forward to our witnesses' testimony, and I want to thank you for being here today. I also want to thank the Ranking Member, Ms. Lawrence, for being the impetus and driving force behind holding this hearing today, and I now recognize Ms. Lawrence, the Ranking Member of the Subcommittee on the Interior, for her opening statement.